I used to think I'd raised good children, respectful, loving, grateful, the kind of children who would never forget the hands that fed them, the hearts that loved them, or the parents who sacrificed everything for their future. But life, I've learned, has a cruel way of showing you the unvarnished truth. Sometimes the children you pour your entire soul into, they just grow up with empty hearts. My name is Margaret. I was a wife for 42 years, a mother for 38. I was a caregiver, a believer in the enduring power of love. And on the most painful day of my life, the day I had to say goodbye to my everything, I stood utterly alone at my husband's funeral. Not a single one of our children showed up. The day began in a blur. Rain tapped softly against my window, as if the sky itself mourned with me. I sat on the edge of the bed, the same bed where my husband Michael and I once shared whispered secrets, endless laughter and countless dreams. But for the last 6 months, it had been his sickbed. Cancer had stolen him from me, piece by agonizing piece. I pulled my shawl tighter around my shoulders, my breath catching in my throat. The silence in the house was a physical weight, heavy and unbearable. "Today I bury my best friend," I whispered into the empty room, the words swallowed by the quiet. I picked up my phone, my hand trembling slightly. 3 messages to my children sat there, marked as delivered, but unread. "Your father's funeral begins at 2 p.m. Please come. He loved you more than life." I had sent that message yesterday, and the day before that, and the day before that one. To each time, my hope dwindled a little more, but still, a stubborn part of my heart clung to a fragile belief. They will come. They have to come. What kind of children would miss their own father's final goodbye? At the funeral home, the air was thick with the scent of lilies and sorrow. A few of Michael's old friends and our neighbors filled some of the pews. Their faces were etched with sympathy, their hushed condolences a gentle balm on my raw nerves. "He was a good man," Margaret, one said. "A very good man," another echoed. I nodded, a lump forming in my throat, unable to speak past it. I kept glancing at the door, my heart leaping with a painful jolt every time it opened. But it was never them. The service began. The pastor spoke of Michael's kindness, his integrity, his infectious laugh that could fill a room. Every word was a beautiful, painful reminder of the man I had lost. I clutched the worn photograph in my hands, a picture of us, young and carefree, with our 3 beautiful children, all smiles and bright eyes. Where were those children now? My son David, the eldest, he became a high-powered lawyer in the city. The last time I spoke to him, he was complaining about how my calls interrupted his important meetings. He said he was just too busy for his father's final months, too busy for his mother's grief. Then there was Sarah, my middle child. She married a wealthy man and moved across the country. Her life was a whirlwind of social events and exotic vacations, all meticulously documented on social media. She'd send lavish, impersonal gifts for birthdays and Christmas, but a real conversation. That was a rare, rationed commodity. She always promised to visit soon, but soon never came, and my youngest, Emily, my sweet Emily, she was a free spirit, an artist who traveled the world, finding herself, she'd say, but in her quest to find herself, it seemed she had completely lost her way back home. Her messages were sporadic, filled with apologies about bad reception and different time zones. As the pastor finished his eulogy, he looked at me and asked if I wanted to say a few words. My legs felt like lead, but I forced myself to stand. I walked to the podium, my gaze sweeping over the empty seats in the front row, reserved for my children. The emptiness there was a cavern in my chest. I took a deep breath and began to speak, not to the people in the pews, but to the ghosts of my children, the ones who were absent. Michael wasn't just my husband, I said, my voice shaking. He was a father, a wonderful, doting father. He taught David how to ride a bike, holding on until his own back ached. He spent hours building a dollhouse for Sarah with tiny, perfect furniture. He encouraged Emily's art, framing her very first childish drawing as if it were a masterpiece. Tears streamed down my face, but I didn't wipe them away. He loved you all so much. In his final days, when the pain was almost unbearable, he would whisper your names. He'd ask if you'd called. He held on to the hope of seeing you one last time, and I lied to him. I told him you sent your love. I told him you were thinking of him, because I couldn't bear to tell him the truth. I couldn't break his heart by telling him his children had forgotten him. The silence in the room was absolute. I looked out at the kind faces watching me, their eyes filled with a shared sorrow. I don't know where I went wrong, I confessed, the words a raw, ragged whisper. We gave them everything. Our time, our energy, our love. We taught them to be kind, to be compassionate, to value family. But it seems those lessons didn't stick. They grew up and built their own lives, and in those shiny new lives, there was no room left for us. I placed the photograph on the podium, so today I am not just burying my husband. I am burying the dream I held on to for so long, the dream of a family that would always be there for each other. Today, I am saying goodbye to Michael, and I am also saying goodbye to the children I thought I knew. After the service, as people offered their final condolences, my phone finally buzzed. A message from David. My heart lurched, a toxic mix of hope and dread. I opened it. So sorry, Mum. A huge case came up. Couldn't get away. I've wired some money to help with the expenses. Take care. No love. No grief. Just a transaction. It felt like a slap in the face. Moments later, another message. Sarah, thinking of you. It's just so far, and the flight was impossible to book last minute. I lit a candle for Dad. He'll understand. A picture of a candle followed. A digital gesture to replace a physical presence. It was hollow, empty. I didn't hear from Emily until the next day. An email. I'm in a remote village with no service. Just got your messages. I'm so sorry. I feel terrible. Dad was the best. I'll try to call next week. By then, my heart had no more room for disappointment. It was just numb. Standing by my husband's grave, with the rain finally softening to a drizzle, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The grief for Michael was immense, a vast ocean of loss. But the grief for my children was different. It was the sorrow of a closed door, of a final, irrevocable ending. They didn't just miss a funeral. They missed the final, most sacred act of love and respect for the man who gave them life. And in doing so, they showed me exactly who they had become. Strangers. Strangers with familiar faces and shared memories that no longer seemed to matter. I placed a single white rose on the fresh earth. "It's just you and me now, my love," I whispered to Michael, and in that moment, I knew I had a choice. I could let this shatter me, let the bitterness consume what was left of my life. Or I could learn to live for myself, to find peace not in their validation, but within my own heart. The road ahead is lonely, but for the first time, it's mine alone to walk. And I will walk it with my head held high, carrying the memory of a love that was real, even if the family I built was just an illusion. Thank you for listening to my story. It's a painful one, but one I felt I needed to share. If you've ever felt a similar kind of heartbreak, know that you are not alone. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more stories that touch the heart. Your support means the world to me. Thank you. My heart clung to denial like a drowning woman to a piece of driftwood. The funeral home smelled of old wood and lilies, a scent I'll never forget. The chapel lights were dim, casting long shadows that seemed to mock the emptiness of the room. I walked down the aisle toward the casket, that cold, polished prison holding the love of my life. My legs trembled so much I thought I'd collapse. My vision blurred with tears as I approached. Michael's picture sat beside the coffin, his familiar, warm smile frozen forever in a silver frame. I reached out, my fingers tracing the edge of the photograph. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," I whispered, my voice breaking. "The kids, they're on their way." I sat down in the first row, my hands wrapped so tightly together my knuckles were white. I just stared at the big clock on the wall, watching the second hand move. Every single tick felt like a physical blow, a small stab to my already shattered chest. The time crept by, 2:10 p.m. The chapel was silent. No one. 2:20 p.m. Still no one. My hope began to curdle into a sick, heavy dread. At 2:40 p.m., the priest, a kind man with gentle eyes, cleared his throat. He leaned over and asked softly, "Should we wait a bit longer, Mrs. Bennet?" I couldn't look at him. "Yes," I whispered, ashamed of how desperate and pathetic my voice sounded. 3 o'clock. The final, damning hour. The doors at the back of the chapel never opened. Not one pair of shoes walked down that aisle. There was no one to offer a hug, no one to share a memory. Not a single tear shed for the man who had carried them on his shoulders when they were small, who taught them to ride their bikes and chase their dreams. It was just me, sitting in a sea of empty pews, surrounded by the echo of a love they had apparently forgotten. When the short, heartbreakingly quiet ceremony finally ended, the priest had to help me stand up. My legs felt like they'd turned to jelly. They barely worked. He looked at me with such pity in his eyes and said, "You are strong, Mrs. Bennet." But I didn't feel strong. I felt hollowed out. I felt utterly and completely abandoned. Outside, a light drizzle had started. Two gravediggers in somber work clothes were lowering Michael into the earth. The coffin landed with a soft, final thump, and with it, my heart felt like it had been buried, too. I stepped forward and placed a single white rose on the mound of fresh soil. The cool raindrops slid down my cheeks, mixing with the hot tears that wouldn't stop falling. "I hope you can forgive them," I whispered to the ground. To Michael, "I hope I can too." That night, I returned to the house we had built together, brick by brick, laugh by laugh. It felt cavernous and empty, every shadow a reminder of what I had lost. I mechanically picked up my phone, a small, foolish part of me still hoping for a message of comfort, an apology, anything. And there it was, not one, but 3 new messages. My heart gave a pathetic little leap of hope. The first was from my eldest daughter, Claire. "Sorry, Mum, was at a friend's wedding, and she'd added a dancing woman emoji. I'll visit later this week. A wedding. She chose to celebrate a new beginning while her own father was being lowered into the ground." My stomach twisted. Then, a message from my son, Daniel. "Busy networking event. You know how important that is for my career. Networking." He thought a business contact was more important than saying goodbye to the man who worked double shifts just to pay for his college fees. The man who never missed a single one of his games. And finally, from my youngest, Emily. It was a selfie. She was in a sparkling dress, smiling at a crowded concert. The message read, "Music Festival. Can't miss it." She'd added a party popper emoji. "I'll light a candle for Dad later. Love ya." My hands started to shake uncontrollably. I stared at those messages, at the casual emojis and selfish excuses. The disbelief slowly, painfully morphed into heartbreak. And then that heartbreak curdled into something else. Something darker and colder. A white-hot, consuming anger. I dropped the phone. It clattered onto the hardwood floor, the sound echoing, the shattering of my world. How did we end up here? How did the unconditional love we poured into them, the sacrifices we made, turn into this breathtaking entitlement? When did we stop being their parents and become just an inconvenience? When did we become nothing to them? In that moment, staring into the crushing emptiness of my home, I knew one thing for sure. Something had to change. They had forgotten their father. They had abandoned their mother. But I would not let them forget what they had done. This wasn't just about grief anymore. It was about justice. Thank you for listening to this story. If you've ever felt forgotten or taken for granted, know that you are not alone. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more stories that explore the complexities of life and family. Your support means the world. For days, the house was a tomb of silence. Grief was a shadow I couldn't outrun, and loneliness became the only friend who stayed. Then, one evening, a gentle knock broke the quiet. It was our neighbor, Mr. Jenkins, a kind widower in his 70s. He stood at the door, his eyes full of a sympathy I hadn't seen in my own children. "I'm so sorry about Michael," he said, his voice soft as a whisper. I didn't see your kids at the service. I couldn't meet his gaze. The shame was a physical weight. It was just me," I managed to say, his face etched with the lines of his own long life. "Fell, Margaret," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "That just isn't right." That was it. The dam I'd built so carefully inside me broke, and tears I'd refused to shed finally spilled over. He placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. "You deserve better," he said. "Michael deserved better. But it's not too late for you to live your life, Margaret." His words hung in the air long after he'd gone. Live my life. I didn't even know what that meant anymore. Michael was my life. Weeks crawled by, each one a blur of grey. My children visited, but not for me. Their visits were like inspections, their eyes scanning the property, not my face. "Mom, are you going to update the will now?" my daughter Claire asked one afternoon, as casually as if she were asking about the weather. I stared at her, the air sucked from my lungs. She just kept going. "You know, since Dad is gone, it would be best to make sure the house transfers smoothly to house. Not my broken heart. Not my sleepless nights. The house." Then Daniel, my son, showed up, not with a hug, but with a folder of real estate papers. "Just in case you ever feel overwhelmed here," he said, his words a thinly veiled suggestion. He saw a burden, not a home filled with a lifetime of memories. My youngest, Emily, only came when her bank account was low, her hand outstretched. "Can I just borrow a little?" The question always hung unfinished, the answer assumed. That night, alone in the cavernous quiet, a cold, hard truth settled in my bones. My children didn't lose a father. They hadn't lost anything at all. Because to them, he wasn't a treasure to be missed, but an asset that was now liquidated. They no longer valued him or me, but I had lost everything. My partner, my future, my past. One late evening, the flickering flame of a candle I'd lit for Michael danced in my tear-filled eyes. I whispered into the darkness, "I don't know how to forgive them, Michael. I just don't know how." And then, as if he were right there, a memory surfaced, so clear and vivid. Michael, in his hospital bed, his hand, frail but warm, holding mine. His voice was a thread, but it was strong with love. "Promise me," Margaret, he'd whispered. Don't let anger be the last thing you feel. Find a way for them and for yourself. I cried harder then, a storm of grief and love and regret. He always saw the best in people, always found a flicker of hope, even in the deepest darkness. He wanted me to find it too. 3 months later, I did something I never thought I had the strength to do. I packed a single suitcase. I put a for sale sign in the yard of the home we had built together. It wasn't an act of revenge, not a way to punish them. It was an act of liberation. It was for me. I moved to a small coastal town, a place I'd only seen in pictures. A place where the roar of the ocean was louder than the silence in my head. The waves crashed on the shore, and it felt like they were washing away years of pain, carrying healing on the salty breeze. Slowly, timidly, I started to rebuild. I joined a seniors book club where we argued about characters and shared our own stories. I joined a gardening group, my hands finding solace in the soil, nurturing new life from the earth. I even joined a choir. The first time I sang with them, my voice trembled, but as it blended with the others, a feeling of pure joy, something I thought I'd lost forever, bubbled up inside me. And you know what? I smiled again, a real, genuine smile that reached my eyes. I laughed again, a deep, full-bellied laugh that started in my toes. I lived again, for Michael and for myself. For the first time in so long, I wasn't waiting for someone else's phone call or visit to feel loved. I was waking up, looking in the mirror, and loving the woman looking back at me. I was enough, and that was everything. Thank you for letting me share my story with you. If it touched your heart, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories of life, loss, and finding the strength to begin again. Then one morning, there was a knock at the door. Not a gentle tap, but a hesitant, almost fearful sound. I opened it, and there they were, Claire, Daniel, and Emily. My children, their faces were pale, their eyes swollen and red. Guilt was etched into every line on their young faces, a heavy cloak they wore poorly. Mum. Claire's voice was barely a whisper, a thread of sound in the morning air. We're so sorry, Daniel, my strong, stoic son. His voice cracked as he spoke, the sound breaking my heart all over again. We were stupid. We were just so stupid. We didn't realize how selfish we were being. Emily, my youngest, just sobbed. Her words came out in choked gasps between tears. We thought you'd always be there. We thought Dad would be too. I just stood there, frozen in the doorway. My heart was pounding in my chest like a trapped bird. All the hurt, all the anger, all the loneliness of the past months resurfaced like a flash of lightning, sharp and blinding. The image of myself standing alone at the funeral, the silence of the house, the unanswered phone calls, it all came rushing back. The urge to shut the door, to retreat back into the quiet fortress I had built around my heart, was immense. It would be so easy, but then I remembered my promise. The promise I made to Michael as I held his hand for the last time, that I would keep our family together, that I would keep love at the center of it all. The promise I made to myself that I wouldn't let bitterness consume me, that I would find a way to live again, to find joy. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward. I didn't say a word. I just opened my arms and wrapped them around all three of my children, pulling them into a group hug right there on the doorstep. The moment my arms were around them, the dam broke. They cried into my shoulders, their bodies shaking with sobs. They weren't adults anymore, not in that moment. They were just my kids, lost and hurting, finally home. And as I held them, feeling the familiar weight of their bodies against mine, I realized something profound. Forgiveness isn't about erasing the past. You can't just wipe the slate clean and pretend the pain never happened. It's not a magic trick. Forgiveness is what allows the future to grow. It's the act of clearing the weeds of resentment so that something new, something beautiful, has a chance to take root and bloom. It doesn't change the past, but it absolutely changes the future. They stayed the entire weekend. It wasn't planned, but it felt right. We didn't talk much about what happened, not at first. Instead, they helped me in the garden, the one Michael and I had started together. Their hands, once so distant, were now digging into the same soil as mine. We planted new flowers, bright, hopeful marigolds, and resilient lavender. We were planting a new beginning. They made breakfast, filling the house with the smell of coffee and pancakes. Sounds and smells I hadn't realized I'd missed so terribly. The silence I had grown accustomed to was replaced with chatter, with laughter, even with the clatter of a dropped fork. It was the sound of life returning to the house. Slowly, we started sharing stories about their dad. Not the big, dramatic stories, but the small, beautiful, forgotten memories. Claire remembered how he taught her to ride her bike, running behind her for hours, refusing to let go until she was steady. Daniel laughed, recalling how their dad tried to build a treehouse and ended up with something that looked more like a modern art installation. Emily shared a memory of him singing her to sleep with a silly, made-up song. These were the treasures, the moments buried under years of busy lives and adult responsibilities. We were excavating our own family history, rediscovering the foundation of love that had always been there, just hidden from view. For the first time since the funeral, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I didn't feel alone. The crushing weight of solitude had lifted. Life continues. That's a truth that can feel cruel when you're grieving, but it's also a lifeline. The sharpness of grief softens over time. It doesn't disappear, but it changes shape. It becomes less of a gaping wound and more of a scarer reminder of a love that was real, a part of you that will always be there. And love rebuilds. It's the most powerful construction material in the universe. It can take the rubble of a shattered heart and build something new, something strong, something beautiful. Michael is gone. I miss him every single day. but his legacy remains. It wasn't in the money or the possessions he left behind. His true legacy is in the love we rediscovered as a family. The love he always believed we had, even when we couldn't see it ourselves. He knew. If you're listening to this right now and you feel forgotten by the ones you gave everything to, if you're sitting in a quiet house, wondering if anyone even notices you're gone, please hear my words. Your worth is not measured by who shows up only when they need something from you. Your value is not determined by those who forget to call. You are inherently worthy just as you are. Love yourself first. Forgive yourself for feeling hurt or angry, and then find the strength to stand up again. Dust yourself off. Open the curtains. Let life surprise you. It has a funny way of delivering exactly what you need, right when you think all is lost. I once stood alone at my husband's funeral, looking out at a sea of faces and feeling like the loneliest person on earth. I truly believed I had nothing left, that my life was over. But now I know it. Sometimes being left alone is the very beginning of being found. It's in that silence that you can finally hear your own voice, rediscover your own strength, and sometimes the heart can bloom again, even after the hardest, most brutal winter. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, I'd be so grateful if you'd like this video and subscribe to the channel. It means the world to know we're not alone in these journeys.